getting back to that point of how you treat other people, and a lot of it to me stems from an embarrassing jealousy. I mean, why would you hate Wayne Gretzky? Why would you hate Sidney Crosby? Why would you hate Tom Brady? Oh, I know why. Because they're way more successful than you. People used to get after Tim Tebow. Why? Like, do you know what he did in his spare time? He'd go to soup kitchens. There was a story of a journalist, Rod, who tried to trick him, try to catch him, tried to follow him when it wasn't being told that he was going to be. And guess where he was? He was at a soup kitchen. He didn't tell anybody. Why would you hate this guy? Why? It's just this people sometimes cannot handle the success of others, and there's a meanness to it, which is always disappointed. And I got to be honest, in the last 4 to 5 years, I've seen a lot of it. It's very disappointing. But the only thing that you can control is yourself. So if you go by, again, whatever you happen to think, whether it's faith, whether it's just a set of principles, just stick to them. Even if others don't, it doesn't matter. It's about how you conduct yourself, not them.
Well, and that's why I'm so proud of yours and my longtime friendship. I've never told you that, Mike, but we were in these rival battling markets, and we got along so great. And we're the only two that did in the two places. Yeah. I'm just so happy about that, to say that. But listen, why the people came here today, can you give me a Leafs take? I'm dying to get yours. Up 2-0 Florida.
Okay, so here's my take, and I just actually, speaking of good friends, and this week you'll hear on Sportsnet 960 The Fan, my conversation with another longtime friend, Pierre Maguire. And I said, it is incredible how much time has gone on, because the one thing that I talked about and was sick about talking about with the Leafs were a lot of the circumstances over this past 10 years of really simple things that the Leafs, no matter who coached them, they just couldn't get it through their heads. For instance, coming out of your own zone. Just coming out of your own zone. For years, they had the most difficult time doing it. And at that level of hockey, when they know that you can't do that, that becomes a murderous 3 hours because you're inept. You're inept. They have a better defense, and they got a guy in Matthew Nyes who is not a very typical Leaf at all. This guy is an explosive powder keg. He doesn't look like anything that I've ever seen in a Leaf uniform. And he's not one of these big heralded stars that makes all this money, which is what I've been saying for years. You pay a lot of money to people, and there's an expectation that you're going to get your investment back. Well, in pro sports, not always. Sometimes it's a stiff. It's up to you as a management to make that decision on when to get rid of them, when to realize you've made a mistake and make a move, in which the Leafs have a real hard time doing that. Being down 2-0, I think, considering who they're playing, I would say that this game probably, or this series, ends up being 2-2 by the time they get back, because then it gets down to the kind of hockey, quite frankly, that the Leafs still don't like playing. So when people complained about Sam Bennett, and then when they complained about the style of the Panthers, I'm like, well, what did you think they were going to do? Like when you played the Oakland Raiders of a given time, when you played the Pittsburgh Steelers of a given time, when you played the Philadelphia 76ers of a certain time, how do you think they were going to play? They were going to, by mistake, accidentally do stuff. Well, that's their calling card. I have no problem with it, because you should expect it. If you can't stop a player from going to the net, if you really can't, you take your chances when you don't have good coverage. And I think at the end of the day, does this go 7? It could go 7 games. I didn't think it would, but it could go 7 games. But it's up to really, Florida to, I can't explain, some of those early goals and, what I saw out there. And you see things in the playoffs like the Boston Celtics are completely getting owned by the Knicks. It's not something that I expected. The Cavs, the same problem, because they are the better team. I thought they would go to an NBA Finals. I don't think still at this point, as much as the Leafs are throwing parades already, I'd be very careful about that with a team that just doesn't put up with crap.
I need to stop you there for a sec. Allie in Texarkana writes in, and she says, I love Matthew Nyes. Oh, it's Wayne in BC, but whatever. He says he's an exciting player to watch. Allie's watching. She's a Stars fan, and the Dallas Stars were in the One Cup Club, just like the Flames. You would think Leafs fans are in the One Cup, or the No Cup Club, because I got Leaf fans blowing up my phone last night. No other fan base does that, Mike. Why did they do that? These are supposed to. I thought they were my friend.
There are some fan bases whose egos are so fragile, and I'm definitely putting the Leafs up into that category. And to a degree, I think Canuck fans are like that too. I think Canuck fans are really pissy. They can't handle. They can dish it out, but they sure as hell can't take it. And for the Leaf fans, boy, they just go through hell. And they show up with their painted faces and their jerseys with Wendell and Dougie and Daryl and Dave Keon. And I think they're going to go home with the mascara running. What was Jim Baker's wife's name? Tammy Faye. It's going to look like a little bit like that when they leave. And I said,
Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's like, look, I don't like to see them tortured. I'm not that mean. I'm not mean that way. But it's just like the over-the-top enthusiasm after 2 games. You better check yourself at the door because this is going to be a long series.
Yeah. What else you got? Give me the good stuff.
I'm looking at hopefully a really good CFL year. I think for CFL fans, that last year was a tough year, and I probably, and I'll be honest, watched as little CFL as I probably have in my entire lifetime. And I'm not sure the reason why, but I know that as much as obviously I jab Edmonton whenever I can, but looking at an empty Commonwealth Stadium, just almost it makes me sick. You did not see great play out of the Calgary Stampeders. I think you saw some struggling with a lot of teams this past year that I hope that somehow it gets rectified. And I'll always say this about the CFL, because sometimes as fans we're our own worst enemies. We're so protective. We are so close-minded sometimes that we really have to be open to, the game itself and be honest, because you can't have the same game that you did in 1976. You just can't. There's got to be some changes from time to time. We just have to be open to it. Seeing, Vernon Adams going over, to see what he can do in Calgary, I think will be very, very interesting. And, to a degree, Winnipeg, who's been so strong, is it a rebuild? Are we calling this a rebuild in Bomberland? So I hope we get back to a little more open football. I hope we see offenses stay on the field, maybe be a little more aggressive. I don't think that ever hurts because I'll be honest. In the NFL, the biggest thing that I hated almost my whole life, I was not an NFL fan, was the 3-and-outs, the grinding the ball on the ground, your big back getting 3.4 yards a carry. You hope you get it. And even if it's 4th and 1, they'll never go for it because that's not how they played. That's changed. That has all changed. The position of quarterback that used to be the tall mannequin guy, Rod, you know what I'm talking about, sitting in the pocket. And those days are almost all but gone. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's guys who can move the ball around. It's RPOs. It's reading that defense and getting that ball out there. I hope we see a lot of that because still, as much as, defense I still think wins championships, I just want to see that ball move. I really want to see some aggressive offensive thinking.
Come down to South Florida. The Dolphins put up 70 on the Denver Broncos 2 years ago, right? Yeah. Like, they don't win when it matters, but they lose exciting. Hey, I'll leave you with this because we got to run here right away, but maybe Stuart Johnston, who's the TSN guy and the new commissioner, will change some of these things. I don't know. But in your time, did you ever get to know Dave Randorf? Because Dave's the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I know Dave. I did.
His 5th season. You did.
Dave and I went to school together. We went to school together. We went to school at Ryerson together. Yeah.
So this will not shock you. He tracked me down like every intermission in the last playoff series to talk about the CFL. And the guy has fire. He's got fire. Dave Randolph.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, what do you think of? He's like, what do you think about Stuart Johnston? I'm like, who am I? What do you think about Stuart Johnston? And he puts his finger right in my face. He's exactly what they need. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know what that is because I don't know the guy.
Well, here's the thing.
Quick thoughts on that?
As many know that, my situation with TSN, it had less to do with the people at TSN and almost everything to do with Bell. So let me clear that up. It wasn't TSN people. Stu is a very smart, and he's a good guy. And not only that, his experience with understanding the league, what makes the league function, what looks good, what attracts eyeballs, understanding demographics. Stu has all that stuff, and he's not afraid to go after it. Let's be honest. If it wasn't for TSN and what we had gone through previously to them showing Friday Night Football, it was a bit of a graveyard. It was a coin flip on whether people were going to watch TV or not. He built up personalities. You see what the panel looks like. He's going to understand streaming because that's a big part of what happens in all of sport. Look at what you guys do with everything you do with this program. He does understand it, and maybe that balance between his love of the game, which is huge. Some guys get into that position. They're not real fans. They don't understand the league necessarily. He does, but I think monetarily, he also understands what needs to be done. I think he was an excellent choice, and I think he will be the right guy for the right job.
Rack him. All right, Mike. Thank you. Thanks for the vine. Okay, yeah. Mike, let's do it again soon. I could talk to you for. You want to stay one more segment? Can you do one more segment?
Yeah, sure.
I got to bounce for a break here.
Okay. Let's pray the microphone works. Yeah, I'll stay for another break.
We'll be right back with Mike Richards. We're live here on Game Plus Television, streaming live and podcasting wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Broadcasting from Studio 23 here in beautiful South Florida. Not game night tonight, but tomorrow will be in Sunrise. It's 21 miles away from here. Leafs and Panthers in Game 3. Mike Richards continues with us. Sportsnet 960, The Fan, Calgary. Sounds great, Mike. Sounds great that you're back together. Is this series going to change on a dime? Because I think it will. I'll be there for Game 3 tomorrow night.
I think, like anything else, and this goes back to, old school coaching, stuff that we learned when we were, 6 and 7 years old. You got to just move your feet in that first period. I mean, it's so important. I mean, look, I'll use an example. When watching the Oilers, they have an understanding, and when they got out, they barely got out of that series in Los Angeles, but they must have had, it seemed like they had 57 shots in the first period. And when you have that kind of, it's sports that are physical, like football, when the phrase, you impose your will, I think you're going to see a lot of that in that first period by Florida. I think they realize that, and some teams, they kind of need to have their cage rattled a little bit. And so they would, they get behind, then they come back a little bit. That's got to stop. I mean, if you're really going to be serious about this entire series, I think you'll see it in the first 10 minutes of game number 3. That's my thinking. And again, the NHL is filled full of parity. You really can't take a night off. And even when you think within a series you have an advantage, how about the Winnipeg Jets, who come out, they take out St. Louis in the first 2 games, but when they go back to St. Louis, they get pumped. They chase Hallebuck out of the net. Like it's like the previous 2 games didn't even exist. And that's what you have in the NHL when you don't focus, when you don't do the things that the coaches have impressed upon you in practice. It all counts, Rod. It all matters. And so I think if I'm a Panthers fan, if I'm a Florida fan, I need to see that in the first 5 minutes of game number 3. And I really do think you will, because the one thing about Florida, they're good professionals. And I know that sounds like a goofy thing to say. Some teams aren't. Some teams aren't that focused. Some teams don't have a presence to understand where they are in a series. I think it goes back to Toronto. I think it's 2-2.
It's tough to win in Toronto, obviously. This is a different team under Craig Berube. But, I thought game 1, Paul Maurice said afterwards, we weren't ourselves. And I'm like, no, you weren't. Game 2, they still weren't themselves. So I'm like, it's kind of what you're saying. If they come out in the opening 10 and they are what we think the Panthers are, we're going to have a series. But if the Leafs continue to shut them down, it won't be. Thank you for that analysis. We got a couple minutes here, and I just want to ask you, how has the Fan 960 return gone for you? It appears to have gone great. For those that don't know, Mike's back on Sunday mornings there on Calgary's All Sports radio station.
Well, it has been, as you know, I basically consider Calgary to be my hometown. So that was the first thing, and just them hearing their friend back. I have a show coming up that will drop this Sunday. So it's 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and featuring both Pierre Maguire, who is outstanding and always very, very good for me. Like, he was always great on my show. I used to get more angry texts and tweets and emails about Pierre being on my show every day. But it was always followed by how much they said they didn't like him, and it was over the top on television, and they were sick of this and sick of that. Except when he's on your show. That was the thing that I always got. And I said, well, when you're on television, like they direct you. Like they want you to be a certain way. I mean, he's not that way at the dinner table. He wasn't that way with me if I got a chance to have a beer with him. He is a very, very intelligent and a very gifted guy when it comes to reading, I would say, just athletics, because he was a very good athlete himself. He was a 3-letter sports guy in college. Like he knows what he speaks. And he really was. So the things that he talks about, and we get into the draft a little bit, and also his take on the Montreal Canadiens was very good. But the conversation that you're going to hear with myself and Craig Conroy, the general manager of the Calgary Flames, is probably going to be unlike any media personality and conversation that you will ever hear with a current general manager. It is just, I don't know how to explain it, except it is the magic that exists that I have in that city with, quite frankly, and I'll go back to our very first conversation about good people. They have a lot of good people. Craig Conroy is one of them, and it just pours out of this interview like nothing I've ever, to this date and the start of the show. This is week number 5. There was nothing like that Craig Conroy interview. Nothing. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I don't know Craig Conroy, but you can put Huska in that category of outstanding people. And I think you can see how the Flames are turning around under good people. How is this groundbreaking? But at least they're doing it, and they're going in the right direction. Mike, I'll say this. My dad was an NHL guy, and he always would come home from the draft for various NHL things and go, talk to Pierre Maguire. And I'm like, everybody hates him. He's like, wow, I hear that, but he goes, always great to me. That's what my dad always said. Pierre Maguire was always first class to him. So he's like, I don't care what anybody else says. All right, Mike, thanks for this. Thanks for the patience. Let's do it again soon. Be well.
You guys. Thanks, pal. You're the best.
You are. Mike Richards, Sportsnet 960, The Fan, Calgary. We're going into overtime. 902-518-3033 is the Progressive Insurance text line. Switch to Progressive, and you could save a buck. Sports update and everything you want to get off your chest. Next segment here live